On this episode of HeadFi TV, we'll be taking an exclusive first look at an inaugural flagship in-ear monitor, the Macbeth, from a brand new company, Forte Ears. From its ideation, to its development, to its evolution at the hands and ears of the community, the story of the Macbeth is filled with dramatic turns and plot twists, and there's a lot to unpack here. So let's start at the beginning, which is approximately 11 years ago. For longtime enthusiasts, if the name Ricardo Yates sounds familiar, it's because you first met him during his tenure at Hi-Fi Man. It was there that he participated in the development of the original HE1000, as well as the original Susvara, working under the tutelage of Dr. Fang Bian. 5 years ago, Ricardo teamed up with Eric Chong, formerly of Effect Audio, to co-found Eletech, one of Singapore's most well-known audio accessory manufacturers. If you're into the portable side of personal audio, you're probably well acquainted with their cables, cases, and now ear tips as well. So why does this matter? Why the history lesson here? Because if you know anything about the way Hi-Fi Man and Eletech work, then you know they are fanatical about incorporating community input into their development processes. In the case of Eletech, almost collaboratively so. It might seem obvious, but they think one of the best ways to figure out what we want is to simply ask us. And this past winter, at CanJam New York 2024, that's exactly what they did with Macbeth, which was then clandestinely known as the Eletech Romeo. This is where the first prototype, version 1, surfaced for many of us. I don't know how many people were able to audition in total, but I know that amongst those of us in the water cooler thread, it quickly popped up as a must-listen in our private chat. Overall, community impressions for version 1 were quite positive, and surprisingly consistent considering the wide range of personal preferences at play. Almost everybody zeroed in on its spatial and textual qualities. At this point, it seems that Ricardo hit it right out of the park with his very first at-bat. Great, but knowing Ricardo as I do, I can tell you that he has one heck of a perfectionist streak. Enter version 2. While some headfires like Hi-Fi Hawaii 808 and Kiots liked version 2's exceedingly even and balanced tonal presentation, and they're not wrong about that, at the same time version 2 seemed to have lost something. Turns out that the Rush 3D printing used for the prototype of version 1 inadvertently resulted in harmonic resonances that people loved, and when those spatial and textual qualities were absent in version 2, the reaction was fairly predictable. I think Enjoy's audio summed it up best for many of us when he pointed out, "In general, I did not like version 2. No interest in purchasing version 2 at all." That's harsh, but that's how it goes in the world of top-of-the-line IEMs. It doesn't take too big of a change to completely make or break a product for some headfires. And if you're thinking that Ricardo was seriously freaking out just then, you'd be right. How seriously? Serious enough to practically redesign the Macbeth at the last minute. Enter version 3, the final version. We'll get into the specifics of what constitutes version 3 in just a moment, but it's worth noting now that version 3 is a fairly radical departure from version 2. It's practically a redesign in terms of how much has changed. Ricardo implemented a custom dual BA bass driver and then expanded the entire complement from 8 to 11 drivers, whereby he added another BA driver, followed by the addition of 2 more ESTAT drivers, which then necessitated considerably more wiring, not to mention a completely new crossover stemma, which now includes a vintage inductor coil that wasn't there before, all capped off with an acoustically functional faceplate. In its final form, the Forte Ears Macbeth is an 11-driver tribrid design. Its primary players are a pair of bone conduction drivers customized to output mids and upper mids. They're backed by a supporting cast consisting of a specialized dual BA assembly to handle bass and sub-bass, a single BA driver to further enhance mid-range detail, another dual BA assembly to give highs clarity and tactility, and an array of 4 electrostatic drivers for upper harmonics and that last bit of air and space up top. Those 11 drivers are managed by a 5-way crossover that employs a rare vintage and discontinued inductor coil, one that is older than many a headfire these days, handpicked by Ricardo for its natural and organic presentation. That network is then encapsulated in a 3D printed resin shell featuring dual vents and proprietary internal structures and volumes designed to function as acoustic resonance chambers. That's right, the Macbeth is actually engineered to leverage harmonic resonance rather than dampen it. And finally, those shells are capped off with individually sculpted, rhodium-plated, hand-enameled faceplates. Faceplates that are as functional as they are decorative, because underneath their rhodium skins, they're actually cast copper resonance plates, intended to help revive the textural qualities that headfires preferred in version 1. One thing is clear though, whether its function and form will ultimately resonate with each one of us, because our individual preferences and mileage do vary, There's no denying that the Macbeth has been meticulously engineered and exquisitely handcrafted with a clear and distinct vision in mind. And of course, with Ricardo coming from Eletech, the Macbeth is an obvious inheritor of a rich legacy in luxurious accessories, beginning with a very complimentary stock cable. It's a 4-wire cable with 26-gauge pure OCC copper-lit strands encapsulated in blood red insulation and Eletech hardware. I have no idea what the stock cable would cost on its own, but in terms of design, construction, and sound, I think the stock cable gives Eletech's Raphael cable a good run for its money, and that retails at $499 US, so there's a pretty decent stock cable included here. Now, I'm sure you've seen Jude and Brian talk about Eletech cases in our CanJam preview videos, and though this is not an Eletech product, it's clear to see that similar attention to detail has been paid here as well. Macbeth comes with an extra-large carrying case constructed from waxed cowhide exteriors, fine fiber suede interiors, and hand stitching throughout, topped off with custom Forte Ears hardware. And finally, of course Macbeth is going to ship with Eletech's popular Burrow tips. I mean, seriously, what other tips could it possibly ship with? It'll come with a pair each of the small, medium, large, and new extra-large Burrow tips. With everything that's been put into it by everybody behind it, it's pretty clear that Macbeth is not just a debut IEM, but a true flagship. For all of you who are well versed with the current crop of top-of-the-line IEMs, you've probably noticed that some of Macbeth's driver elements are eerily reminiscent of other Endgame models. For example, the implementation of 2 bone conduction drivers squarely in the mid-range, that's not unlike what we've seen in Kemper's CP622B. And that custom dual BA bass driver delivering impactful bass and sub-bass down to 10 Hz, that's not unlike what we've seen in Subtonic Storm. As for the remaining 3 BAs and 4 E-stats, there isn't a direct correlation to other Endgame models there. Except, having auditioned Macbeth extensively, I'd be remiss if I failed to point out a few observations, like how its mid-range clarity and gossamer highs aren't completely dissimilar from those of the astonishing Aureolus Traley or the superb Elysian Annihilator, respectively. Now don't get me wrong, I am not saying that the Macbeth is Storm bass plus Traley mids plus Annihilator highs topped off with Kemper imaging magic. Again, that is not what I'm saying here. Tuning a sound signature is fiendishly difficult, and one does not simply mash up sonic qualities like that. But at the same time, I'd have to imagine that if anybody ever tried a crazy amalgamation experiment like that, the Forte Ears Macbeth could easily be one of the resulting permutations. With that said, it's finally time to talk about how Macbeth sounds. Now, I know I promised you detailed impressions, and believe me, I have them. In fact, in the course of preparing this video, I counted nearly 3,000 words worth of impressions, or to put it another way, that's nearly 25 minutes worth of me just talking about how Macbeth sounds. Granted, that may sound like heaven to some of you, but for most people, even some die-hard headfires, that can be a bit much. So what we've done is to include those impressions in this video's accompanying thread on HeadFi, and you'll find a link to that thread in this video's description below. For the moment, I'll simply confess that this was not my ideal signature, but only in a sense that if you had asked me to tune IEM, I would never have come up with something like this. But having heard it, and of course not being able to unhear it, I found the Macbeth absolutely intoxicating, and I quickly became addicted to its presentation. In the meantime, here are some frequency response measurements. Unfortunately, I can't describe what you're seeing right now. Macbeth is currently being measured at HeadFi HQ, so I guess I'll see these graphs when you do after this video goes live. And here are Macbeth's MDAT scores for timbre, immersiveness, and distortion, as well as its overall score. Of course, nothing is perfect, and I'd say there are a few things to ponder here if you're considering the Macbeth, with the elephant in this room being the aesthetics. Let's be honest here, not all of us look great wearing these. While I could easily imagine some headfires absolutely rocking these, I can also see how Macbeth might be a little over the top for those of us with more sedate sensibilities. And finally, there's the price. At nearly $4,000, the Macbeth is not for the faint of budget. It's certainly not the most expensive flagship IEM out there, but it is well within aspirational endgame territory. Again, all of these concerns will be easily resolved for each of us, one way or the other, with a good demo and audition. I have to admit, I thoroughly enjoyed the time I spent with Macbeth. It is easily one of the most unique sounding IEMs I've heard yet in well over a decade in this hobby. I agree with Anna-chan, MDV, Hi-Fi Hawaii 808, Kiatz, Enjoys Audio, Rockwell 75, and many others that it's something singularly special, even amidst an ever-increasing playing field of Summit Fi Endgame models. My recommendation is to put Forte Ears' upcoming Macbeth on your must-audition list. Whether you do so at a can jam, or at a meet, or loan from a friend after it's available, do get that audition. Because even if you have no intention of ever adding it to your collection, it's well worth a listen so that you can add your perspective to community discussions about it. That brings this episode of Head-Fi TV to a close. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel as we have several more features coming soon and you won't want to miss those. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the forums.